Recording in progress.
It's so silent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was the wrong one. Yeah.
Pardon?
Went to the wrong one.
Okay.
She's corrected them for the rest
Yeah,
of
she
the
will.
year.
It didn't even cross my mind to check.
Good evening. So we're here.
It's by number now.
Huh?
That's by number now.
Really?
26?
Down there too.
Is that your favorite number? I know.
No, by your position number.
Oh.
So unless you're the chair, you'll be there.
All right, good evening. We'll call the Auburn study session meeting for Monday, January 12th, 2026 to order. Tonight's study session meeting will be held both in person and virtually. Sean, can you please call roll?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Ammer.
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
Councilmember Lott.
Here.
Councilmember Rakes.
Here.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton Taylor.
Here.
Thank you, Sean. Do we have any agenda modifications this evening?
No chair.
Fabulous. Council, before we get started tonight, we do have an item before us that requires action. And because our council rules do not allow final action on a study session, we'll need to suspend the rules to allow for a vote. Councilmember Ammer.
I move to suspend the council rules 2.2C to allow for council to have final action at study session.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Councilmember Sturgis, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded to suspend Council Rule 2.2C to allow council to have final action at a study session. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, could we get a recap of any substantive changes between the last version and the version that's before us?
Believe the council, the 2026 legislative priorities were discussed in a previous study session, and those changes were made and in your packet.
Right, they are in our packet, but can you give us a recap of what the deltas are between the last version and the current version?
Yes.
Technically, the motion on the floor is whether to suspend the rules, and then once you get to the substantive discussion of that particular item, you can talk about changes to it.
Thank you, City Attorney. Okay, so then we have recapping really quick. We're going back, so we had a motion on the floor, we had a second. So we're asking those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
There can be discussion on the
Oh.
motion,
Sorry,
but
not following. Discussion, go ahead.
I-
Councilmember Emmer.
I just want to make it clear, I think the motion to allow to have public comment, so we vote for it to allow if there is any public comment, and go ahead, Mayor.
Sorry, Mayor?
Thank you. So the item that you may want to have for final approval tonight is the legislative priorities, because there will not be another council meeting prior to your attendance in Olympia for AWC City Action Days. Since your council rules of procedure state that you do not take final action at a study session, you are voting to suspend the rules to have that under consideration this evening. And because if you approve suspension of the rules, and then if there is a motion and it is passed to consider those, since there is final action taken on an item tonight at a study session, you must allow for public comment at the study session, similar to what you would require at a council meeting. So the vote in front of you right now is simply to suspend the rules to consider taking final action on an item this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. So,
Discussion on that motion.
I'm sorry?
Is there any discussion on that
Okay,
motion?
any discussion on that matter? I see none. So hearing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, the motion carries, the rules are suspended, and the council can proceed. So we've passed this, and by state law, we must allow for public comment. So at this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council. Begin by stating your name for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the table and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody that wants to come and speak on the 2026 legislative priorities? Anybody that wants to come and speak on the 2026 legislative priorities? One more time. Anybody wanting to speak about the 2026 legislative priorities? Okay. So seeing none, I need a motion or a move to approve. Wait, no? So we're bringing it back for discussion? I'm confused.
Close
No,
it.
we've
Oh, we're closed. Okay.
Public comment is.
So Mayor, sorry.
Yes, so you have approved the suspension of the rules.
Okay.
Now you can go through the regular agenda, correct?
Okay.
And when you get down to the legislative priorities,
Then we can.
then there can be a motion to approve the legislative priorities.
Okay.
A second, and then there is discussion.
Got it.
And then a vote.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mayor. All right. So moving on, we're going to our announcements, reports, and presentations. We have one presentation on the agenda tonight. It's the Auburn Symphony Orchestra 2025 Annual Report with Director Kruger.
Greetings, Deputy Mayor Taylor, council members and mayor. I'm Julie Kruger, the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Director. This evening, I'm here to introduce representatives from the Auburn Symphony Report. The Auburn Symphony Orchestra. Their annual report was included in your council packet as information. As part of the approved Arts Division budget, the Auburn Symphony Orchestra received $75,000 in 2025, and that same amount again for 2026, for a scope of services that includes marketing, outreach, audience building, and amplification of the arts. This formal presentation from the Auburn Symphony Orchestra will report on their 2024-2025 season as part of that contract, along with concerts and activities for 2026. I'm happy to introduce Gabby Galloway, the new executive director of the Auburn Symphony Orchestra, and Wesley Schultz, their artistic director and conductor, who will share with the council information about the orchestra this evening.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. We appreciate your support at the Auburn Symphony Orchestra. My name is Gabby Galloway. I've been with the organization for the past year. Rachel Perry was our executive director and has retired, and so I've stepped up into that role. I was previously the individual giving director, so I'm very happy to be here. I was here last year when we presented, so I was able to see and hear all y'all's lovely comments about the Auburn Symphony, and have really gotten to love the city over the past year, so I'm happy to be here. And I want to acknowledge some of our board and staff that's in attendance. We have our Vice President, Kevin Poshton here, and then we have our Communications Manager, Mondo Sarita. And so we are excited about where ASO is heading within this next year, expanding our programming, continuing our education initiatives with our Link Up program coming up next week. And we've recruited more board members as well. We have about 4 new board members within the past year, and so continuing to bring people from the South Sound region into Auburn. So that's kind of the goal there. So we're gonna do a little bit of a review of the last year, and then Wes is gonna talk about some upcoming highlights. So this past year, ASO produced our first annual report, so that's within your publication, but here's a nice little pretty copy as well. And so this was able to highlight our increase in first-time ticket buyers. We saw a significant increase, and our increase in attendance. We had a 6% increase. And with a world where sometimes people want to kind of hide, their money and not go out as much, that was really reassuring to see people are still getting out and we're still seeing those new faces in this next year. And we want to continue to highlight the Doors Open legislation as it continues to support our initiatives. So we've received the Sustained Support Grant, but then on top of that, we've been able to receive the Free Public Access Grant, which reimburses us for our free tickets that we donate to the Auburn Library, and then VetTix, which is veteran tickets. So being able to receive that grant is amazing. We've been able to give out these free tickets in the past, and so it's not something that we normally plan to get reimbursed for, so that's really amazing that For Culture has been able to support us in that way as well. So we appreciate you guys supporting that initiative as well. And then within your info packet, you'll see a list of all our programs, including our education programs, which we'll dive into a little bit more. And our subscriber base is still strong at just under 200. Our single sales fluctuate. Our chamber concerts have been pretty packed, so that's been exciting. And those take place at the Postmark Center of the Arts. And those have been pretty full. But support from the City of Auburn, along with our endowment, are the bedrock of our financial stability and being able to sustain our year-round programming. And I'm going to turn to Wes to talk a little bit more about that programming.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. It's my 8th year as music director of the Auburn Symphony Orchestra. We're one of the largest professional regional orchestras in the Pacific Northwest. We present 7 full symphony concerts throughout the season, and there's a couple dozen chamber concerts in the parks, the Postmark, schools, and so forth. It's been a pretty exciting season last year, and then this year, according to what we're here for budget-wise. We had Tim Pavino sing with us last season at our holiday concert. We had Jimmy Harrod this year. Jimmy Harrod was twice on America's Got Talent. He was a Golden Buzzer winner. So we always seek to highlight both local talent and people on the national stage right here in Auburn. Rachel Lee Priday, a nationally recognized violinist. She teaches at the University of Washington, tours all over. She'll be with us next week. And then this spring, we're collaborating with Seattle Pro Musica, again, probably the finest choir in the state of Washington. We'll be doing the Mozart Requiem in a wonderful piece by Brazilian composer Osvaldo Wolioff. Our education programs are core to what we do. We have 2 major programs. One is called the Link Up program, which is presented by Carnegie Hall. You've heard about this before. This is our 5th year doing it. Every single 4th grader in the Auburn Public School District, plus Carbonado, plus students from the tribal school attend this. That's happening next week, and week from Tuesday, actually, is that, well, 2 shows at 10 and 11:30. We encourage you to come. It is only open to students and invited guests, but if you need to smile or brighten your morning, you can just pop in for 20 minutes, about a 50-minute program. These kids have been preparing to sing, play recorders. They're going to do the hand jive and duck walk to Johnny Be Good as they learned about how the orchestra rocks and all its applications of that through classical music, through Mexican music, and American music. Our second major program we started a couple years ago is called Rhythm and Rhymes. All of us actually on staff are very passionate readers. Mondo worked at Barnes & Nobles for many, many years. And and same with me. My mom's a teacher and grew up reading, and so I really wanted to pair music and literature. And so we started a rhythm and rhymes program. It's free. It's geared towards like preschool, kindergarten through third grade, and we pair one of our musicians. We've been working with librarians from the library here, and we choose a book, we choose some music, and just have a good time for about 45, 50 minutes. So we got another grant for that, and we're presenting more of those this spring and summer. Those are our two core education programs that is near and dear to us. I believe strongly in creating new music. I think that's why orchestras exist. So last year, I formed a consortium of orchestras, 8 orchestras from all across the United States. We commissioned Jessica Meyer for a piece called Turbulent Flames. We gave the world premiere last season. And then the other 7 orchestras have been performing it last season through this season. It's a major deal. We've got national recognition for that. We do at least one commission each year. This year's is a piece called It Stands Alone by Stephen Lias. So the Mount Rainier National Park, of course, was founded as a national park. It's been around forever in 1899. So they were still celebrating their 125th anniversary. So the park staff worked with Stephen Lias. He has created a piece of music that will also include imagery gathered from the park. And we've been asked to do the world premiere of that, which will happen in March. So that's in conjunction with a lot of partners in the area. And then next season, I'm super excited. Viet Quang, probably one of the hottest names in music, especially in wind band music and also orchestral music. He's writing a saxophone concerto for Timothy McAllister, probably the most famous saxophone soloist in the United States. And he's going to be right here in Auburn. We're part of about 3 orchestras that are joining together to commission a new saxophone concerto. So we're super excited about those programs. We've also got about 150 middle schoolers that are going to come check out our rehearsal next week. We have Link Up early in the week, and then at the end of next week, we have a main stage program, and they're all going to come observe our rehearsal. I'll dialogue with them during the break, talking about the music that we're doing on stage. These are all students who are enrolled in a music program in middle school or in their middle school. And so they're going to come in and watch the professionals make music and ask us questions and hopefully inspire them as they pursue their own studies. I just wanted to offer sort of a closing thought or comment in that at Auburn Symphony Orchestra, we seek to serve every member of the community here in Auburn. We want to enlighten, we want to entertain, and yes, maybe even educate a little bit about orchestral music. But disciplines like opera, ballet, orchestras, playhouses, we cannot survive in the for-profit music world. No orchestra, ballet, or opera company makes budget based on earned income. We present new music that has yet to have an audience. So if you think of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, when it was first performed, it had to have a first audience. That's the Ode to Joy piece. And now 200 years, because people first attended that concert, fell in love with it, we have that jewel today. We can extend this to other arts disciplines. I think of Edward Munch. He painted a scream on canvas, a scream we didn't know we needed until after it was done and presented. Lisa Giardini had no idea that her smile would affect the entire world when she set to be painted as the Mona Lisa. So similar in music, we seek to present the new and the old, as well as music from non-dominant cultures and communities. We seek to perform music that is the fabric of America. Think of Appalachian Spring by Aaron Copland, or maybe an arrangement of Amazing Grace, which we did during COVID on one of our online broadcasts. These pieces of music are part of the American fabric, not the lucrative market, but the American fabric. It's our task with Auburn Symphony, always, to create audience and present this music. So thank you to the council and mayor for showing your support for a professional orchestra for 29 years and counting. We are committed to our ever-growing audience, inspiring minds and hearts, and be at the core of the arts in Auburn. So thank you all very much. Any questions about what we are doing?
Council, any questions for the symphony? Councilmember Rakes.
Thank you. I have a question. You were talking about the performances at 10 and 11:30.
Yeah.
Where are they at and what?
Auburn Performing Arts Center, at the
Okay.
school. And you can just park in the main parking lot and come right in. You'll see a whole horde of school buses.
Okay, and what day?
On a week from Tuesday, day after Martin Luther King Day.
Councilmember
Thank you.
January
I should just
20th.
use dates.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, this was a question, so for people in our community who maybe have never been to a symphony, maybe they've been to a concert, a rock concert, or participated in other types of venues or shows, what do you think is a great first starting point for someone who wants to explore orchestra-based music. So if you were to give somebody a recommendation, start here, what would you each recommend?
Mostly I would say don't be scared, come to anything. You don't have to dress a certain way, you don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to have a knowledge base. You can just come in, listen, whatever your feelings are as you listen to the music is appropriate. If you love film music, however, if that's been a gateway drug for you in music, then come to hear Star Wars, and we're doing a night of the Oscars, so music from Rocky, a whole bunch of that. So film music is often an easy way for people to get a dose of orchestra. Our holiday concert is our highest attended concert of the year. It's already passed, but looking forward to that next year. That's always a highlight for folks. Otherwise, if music is foreign, just come check out whichever one fits in your schedule the best, and whatever your feelings are when you're there is what you should have.
I was trying to figure out if you were for Beethoven or Mozart or Bach.
I pick all of it, so I'm biased.
You skipped that one.
With our commission coming up in the tribute to Mount Rainier, I mean, that's something I hold dear to my heart, and we're very special that we get to be this close, and we were special that we got picked as the orchestra that gets to present this piece. And so for me, we have Stephen Lias, who's also bringing in some visual incorporations to that. So I feel like that's a great way to kind of step into it, where it's like we can all connect to this very physical presence within our community, but also just kind of like within our kind of language. A lot of times we like to just invite a friend. We have board members that have season subscriptions, or I'll pay for my friend's ticket. That's a good gateway for people as well, just to kind of remove that barrier to access as well.
Councilmember Sturgis.
First, congratulations on becoming the executive director. That's so exciting for you and for all of us. So you mentioned that you have 200 subscribers around there, so I'm assuming those are like your primary donors. And then do you have, or I guess what are your annual campaigns that you do for fundraising?
Of course. So that's a lot of our donor database is that seasoned subscribers. It's been exciting we had like about a 300% surge of new donors this year. So that was really exciting, and especially in a time where we're looking for younger donors and donors that give in smaller amounts, maybe monthly. So that's very promising. We have our end of the year campaign, which we just concluded. And so we do a mail campaign for that, and we reach out online. We do Mimosas and Melodies, which is our kind of brunch event. Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun, and Deputy Mayor Taylor is going to help us out with that as well. So we appreciate you being there. And then, and so that's a little bit of a brunch. It takes place at Green River College, and we have an auction, live auction, silent auction, raffle, all the to-dos, and then we have Give Big, which is the state, or this area, the digital, online campaign.
Melodies and Mimosas is on Sunday, March 8th.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Is it typically in March every year
Yes.
or somewhere around there? Okay, awesome, thanks.
It's got a St. Patrick's vibe to it. It's a lot
Very
of fun.
cool.
Definitely. Any more questions? Councilmember Lott.
Yeah, I just had one question, and I didn't see it in here, is I'm assuming that the orchestra drives some economic benefit to the city, and I wonder if that's outlined somewhere. I'm assuming it brings additional people here, and they spend money, and I just didn't see any outline of that, and that's, to me, a benefit of the orchestra that's kind of not broached here, should be a perk that everyone sees and acknowledges and realizes.
Yeah, for sure. Us being a regional orchestra, it's exciting. We have our data that shows bring people from Seattle, we get the free parking, great area, and accessibility here. And so we have that data, and that's great feedback for us to incorporate into, our marketing and our next annual report to kind of show from the broad region how many people come. A lot of our highest donors are Enumclaw, and so we have people coming from all over this little region. Yeah.
Like I say, anecdotally, yes, a lot of people come and go to dinner after our afternoon matinees, for example. We bring in guest artists, we put them in the hotel here in Auburn, they fly in, which goes through the airport, rental cars, so we've got folks that definitely contribute.
When somebody sees that there's the city's...
Lott, you gotta wait until you're called on for that one, so you're gonna have to, so. Councilmember Lott.
Oh, I was just following up that for the $75,000, I think is what was said earlier, a year, that there's some significant offset. And, in theory, it could be more than, you're spending 75 and getting 100,000 in return. It's just, I'd be curious what that, I would say, estimate is.
I think we would love help on how to capture that data as well. Yeah, of what your suggestions. Yeah.
Council, any more questions for the symphony? Councilmember Baldwin.
For capturing that information, that might be something that Economic Development Department could help with. I know that they were doing some data tracking with regards to, I believe, what we had with the Chamber website as well as our own. So if you were looking to see what's driving people in and kind of where they've come and gone from, I think they were doing some geolocation with that. So that might help that data gap.
Yeah, we'd love to include it.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Even just something as simple as what you mentioned, your donor database with that you got their addresses. So sorting it by city and being able to say, of the 200 subscribers we had, participate this year, 130 of them were from cities outside of Auburn. Just to, even that way, because we understand too, it takes a lot of time to track all this stuff. So just using data that you already have would be a great first start.
I'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate you and all what you do for our community. Thank you. All right, I will turn the meeting over now to Councilmember Ammer. She is the chair of the Finance and Internal Services Special Focus Area.
We start the party with the third quarter 2025 finance report through September 2025 with Director Thomas. Come on down.
Thank you, Councilmember Ammer, Deputy Mayor Taylor, Mayor, Council. I have a blank PowerPoint presentation in here, so I have a couple of options. I can either go move it into the eDrive, I can put the slide into the eDrive, or does everybody have the PowerPoint slide presentation in their packet?
Yeah.
What would the
Go drop it. Go ahead and drop.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's usually easy to follow.
Yeah,
Thank you.
A lesson to open. I did open it though today, so I don't know what happened between earlier today.
Maybe you could open the packet and go to page. Looking for a page on here. There's not pages. Go to page 58.
Aha. Thank you, because I forgot my phone for my dual authentication, so it was gonna take another moment. All right, I apologize. So this is our third quarter 2025 financial report for the general fund. It is a little bit later than normal. If you recall, about October, November, when I would normally be doing the third quarter financial report, we were in the middle of a mid-biennial budget review. I'd done a pretty high overview, incorporated a lot of the elements that you're going to see tonight in the third quarter report, but instead of bringing redundant financial information back to back, I staged it. We'll review it on its own tonight. So this is all financial information through September 30th, 2025. This is a overview of our major revenue sources from comparing to the year-to-date actual 2024 and our year-to-date actual of 2025, and also comparing to what we expected we would collect by major revenue source based on our budget. As you can see, we have we've collected 10% more revenue than we had originally expected through year-to-date of this year, and we have underspent about $10 million or 11% of our budgeted expenditures through September 30th. For comparing this to 2024, we've actually collected less revenue, about $2 million less than 2024 same time, and we have spent almost $5.6 million more than we did year-to-date last year. I think an important thing to note, we've seen a similar trend each of the prior 2 quarters, and a lot of that has to do with that transfers in. The transfers in numbers much lower this year, and that has to do with our ARPA funding and our ARPA spending, which is also conversely affecting our expenditures. So we've budgeted a lot of the programs in the expenditure line, and then we transfer that money into the general fund to reimburse ourselves from the ARPA fund itself. So we've just had a slower spend down this year on ARPA money through third quarter than we did through third quarter of 2024. So looking at our major tax sources, the significant revenue sources and the significant variances, we're gonna go over those. Property tax, we're right. We expect to collect 100% at year end. We actually did a budget amendment to increase the amount of tax revenue, property tax revenue we expected to collect this year. So we're really on track collecting the amount of revenue we had budgeted for. Our retail sales and use tax makes up 29% of our total general fund revenue. We have collected just a little bit more than 1% compared to budget, so we're right on track with budget, and we are $223,000 less year to date compared to what we collected in 2024. So what this means is that recession that I kept saying for the last couple of years, I'm pretty sure is coming. This is evidence that we've finally seen it. So we've been budgeting for that recession accordingly over the last couple of years. We've been able to have what I guess a one-time windfall in the general fund because we didn't actually end up realizing the impact of a recession up until now. But because we did budget for that, we are meeting our budget expectations, but we're just falling behind in our performance compared to previous year to date. Here's a breakdown of the different sales tax categories. These are our NAICS codes established by the Washington Department of Revenue. We've got construction, manufacturing, transportation and warehousing, wholesale trade, automotive, retail trade, services, and miscellaneous. The three categories that are really pulling down or underperforming, or two categories that are underperforming from the previous year is the construction category, which is a trend we've actually been seeing the last couple of years. Actually, we've seen that construction industry really slowing down, and then retail trade. This is really the first time where we're starting to see the retail trade businesses starting to see a negative number. Those are our sporting goods stores, our clothing stores, our home furnishings, general merchandise stores, and home improvement stores, not to use names. The offset to that is the automotive sector. For some reason, the automotive sector has kind of bounced back to life a little bit. We are seeing $106,000 year to date more this year than we did last year at the same time. I suspect that might have something to do with a decreased the decreased Fed rate, and maybe financing becoming more affordable, and so maybe there was a little bit of a spur in vehicle sales in the third quarter. Utility tax. So our utility tax, both our internal and external utilities, we've got our internal utilities, water, sewer, storm, solid waste, is taxed at 9%. And we've got our external utilities, electric, natural gas, cable, and telephone utility tax, which is taxed at 6%. 5% goes into the general fund, 1% goes towards transportation capital projects. We are outperforming both year to date and budget, which When it comes to utility tax, we tend to expect, just because the tax revenue on utilities tends to increase as the cost for services to provide those utility services increases. We know that our water, sewer, storm, and solid waste rates have increased in 2025. So therefore, the tax that the general fund receives from those utilities would also increase. And we're also seeing the same in the private sector with electric, natural gas, cable, and telephone being the caveats. We are not seeing an increase in the telephone utility tax. That's a tax rate that has just been declining slowly over year. Business and occupation tax makes up 13% of our budgeted general fund revenue. We budgeted $10 million in 2025 for the entire year, and as of September 30th, we have collected $10.1 million. So we are outperforming the year-to-date budget by $2.2 million, and we're outperforming our 2024 year-to-date as well. We're seeing kind of the same thing that we'd also seen in quarter two, which is a majority of that overage that we're seeing isn't that we didn't budget conservatively enough, or that we budgeted too conservatively. It has to do with delinquent taxpayers. So of the $2.2 million more that we collected than we had budgeted to collect year to date, $1.6 million is from delinquent taxpayers. So it's B&O tax related to a completely different year. So from 2022, 2023, and 2024. So I think as far as projecting, and we talked about this at the mid-biennial budget amendment when we were looking at adjusting our B&O revenue projections for 2026, we were pretty conservative, kept the same. We don't want to assume that we're going to find a bunch of delinquent taxpayers next year, and we're going to continue seeing a large tax base that continues to outperform budget. It could happen, but we don't want to budget on that. And we would consider those more of a one-time collection. Once we get them into our system, though, hopefully they continue paying on a more consistent basis. Other taxes make up 7% of our general fund budget, and that includes our criminal justice sales tax, admissions tax, gambling tax, leasehold excise tax, and franchise fees. We are outperforming both our year-to-date budget as well as our 2024 year-to-date actual. And this has to do with gambling taxes, delinquent gambling taxes that we've collected, but also gambling business seems to have been doing really well in the second and third quarter of this year. And so it's not necessarily even related to any delinquent back taxes, but just a strong showing. And then for the outperformance compared to 2024 is due to delinquent admission tax that we have collected from 2024. Licenses and permits make up 3% of our total general fund resources. We are underperforming our year-to-date budget, and we're outperforming our year-to-date actual. We keep flip-flopping each quarter this year. It keeps going back. Are we underperforming the budget, underperforming 2024? And overall, the two major revenue sources that contribute overall to this license and permits category is our business license revenue, and that is consistently outperforming both our year-to-date and our budget. I've said this several times. It's really attributed to both the discovery work that our tax and licensing team has been doing. So through our B&O tax enforcement and outreach, education with businesses and new businesses coming in, as well as the state business license system that we use through the state. It's a more consolidated system. It makes it easier for businesses to file and refile their business licenses every year. When they're going through the state system, they can get their business licenses in all the cities that they work in all at one time. The other piece to this major revenue source is the building permit revenue. We did have a little bit of a uptick both in terms of our budget as well as the prior year. In the second quarter, we had the value of our permits that we were issuing were higher in the second quarter. However, that's starting to be offset now. If we're looking at quarter 1 through 3, we're just having a lower volume of permits in general. our intergovernmental revenue. This includes our grants, our compact agreement with the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, and our state shared revenues that we receive from the state. So our state shared revenue includes the streamlined sales tax, which is set to expire next year. So this was our last full year of receiving a streamlined sales tax. We've seen year-to-year decreases in that as the state has intentionally pulled that program back. Our motor vehicle excise tax, our marijuana liquor excise tax, and our criminal justice sales taxes. We're both underperforming budget and underperforming year to date. However, it really has everything to do with the timing of the collections of grants and the timing of our collection of our MIT compact agreement, our payments, our quarterly payments that we receive to them. With the exception of the motor vehicle excise tax, which is underperforming by $143,000 year to date, that's the only real underperformance that we're seeing right now. Everything else is a timing issue, and we expect this to be closer to budget by the time we get to the end of the year. Charges for services, we have 4 major categories: general government, public safety, development services, and culture and recreation. General government is just a hair over 1%, and that is solely related to passport fees and the work in the city clerk's office. Our public safety charges for services are up $35,000 over budget, and that has to do with our extra duty services that we charge outside agencies for police services. That's how we recoup our costs for the police officer overtime to provide those services. And then development services, which is community development, which is related to all of those permits that I was talking about, and construction. Those are the plan check fees. We are planning on receiving some money by year end on a couple of large projects that would help meet budget. But other than that, like I mentioned earlier, it's all tied to the volume and value of permits. Just because the value of the permits are higher, just the total number of permits are lower. In culture and recreation, thanks to the golf course and the special events operated by the Parks Art and Recreation Department, they were outperforming through the third quarter. Too soon probably to say that, but they between the green fees and the special events, they've outperformed over budget by $596,000. And then our honorable mentions, our fines and penalties are $816,000 over budget, which is again almost entirely related to those B&O fines and penalties. So the other side of those B&O delinquencies that we collect, we also collect fines and penalties at the same time. So there's an incentive to pay your tax on time, so you don't have to also pay the fines and the B&O fines and penalties as well. But they have created a favorable budget variance for the city. We have 343 delinquent businesses that had paid back taxes going back to 2020. 10 of those taxpayers make up 34% of the total fines that were paid. So a pretty significant portion were paid by those 10 taxpayers. Interest and investment earnings, we've collected $1.4 million over budget and $311,000 over 2024. We did increase at mid-biennial budget our 2026 projections for interest investment earnings because we've just been seeing that our investment our portfolio has been outperforming what we had originally budgeted a couple of years ago. So hopefully we see numbers in 2026 that are more in line with what we've actually collected for interest in investments. So looking at the expenditure side, just calling out a couple of things. Municipal court, it is the one division that has overspent, and we did a budget amendment with the mid-biennial budget amendment that has almost everything to do with the public defense contract costs and just how much more expensive our public defense costs have been. And so we did a budget amendment in November to both increase 2024's budget or 2025's budget and 2026 budget to account for those increasing costs. A couple of other departments, you've got the admin department, the Office of Equity, the police department, a lot of underspend, and that's a lot mostly due to attrition and unfilled positions. And then the last piece is the internal services, which includes human resources, finance, legal, and non-department. The big underspend there is from the non-departmental category. It's where we budget for our contingencies as well as COLA increases, salary increases related to contract negotiations. So at the end, once we got into quarter four is when we actually did a budget amendment, an internal true up to move some of that budget from the non-departmental back into the funds that actually saw increases in COLAs and salary increases that we hadn't originally incorporated into our salary projections in 2025, 2026. Here's our ARPA update. We spent $366,000 in ARPA funding through quarter three. We've spent $8.7 million year to date, and we still have $6 million remaining. I can say that there are a couple of projects on here that there has been money spent. We haven't transferred it out of the ARPA fund yet back into the general fund yet. So you also saw that on that very first chart where I showed our transfers in were lower than budget and lower than the previous year. And that's we just have not transferred all of the money from the ARPA fund and haven't reconciled all of the project accounting yet through end of third quarter. And then the one non-general fund highlight, capital highlight that I like to make in these quarterly reports is just talking about our real estate excise tax. That's our most significant source for one-time capital projects that we have. We have collected $2.5 million so far this year. We budgeted 1.8, so we're outperforming what we budgeted. But if you look at the graph, we're far below what we actually collected last year, and that obviously just has to do with fewer real estate transactions taking place this year than in the prior year. But I did want to point out, because just to kind of highlight how important the REIT is, over the biennium, both 2025 and 2026, we have budgeted $10.9 million of REIT that we are using on current and existing projects right now. So we do have a little bit of REIT funding, and we have programmed that out pretty aggressively over several projects through 25 and 26.
Thank you. Any questions, Council? Go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hannon-Ammer. Quick question just on the golf course with the, I know you alluded to it a little bit, but have you run some projections of what we anticipate the impact being from what we budgeted versus what the losses may be from both because we're going to have a loss in the fees and then obviously, the cost to repair. So I know insurance, but.
Yeah, we haven't done any calculations for 2025 right now. I think that there's still a lot of questions to be answered for 2026 to have an idea of what is maybe that downtime going to be. For 2025, I expect it's going to be pretty minimal, only because December is one of our slower months anyway, it's at the very end of the year. So we've already collected more than we had budgeted. I think as we get more information, both on the project timeline for getting repairs done out there and having a better idea of when we can open or how we could open in alternative ways, I think we can come up with a better number for what that loss might be.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And I apologize again, everybody. Sorry about that.
Turn it back to Deputy Mayor. Wow, I thought we got many questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Ammer. Okay, Council, the next item on the agenda for council discussion is Resolution 5886. With that being said, can we get a motion to move forward Resolution 5886? Right? Yeah. I'm asking for a motion to move forward. Thank you. Councilmember Sturgis.
I'll make a motion for us to move forward with Resolution 5886.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you, Councilmember Ammer. With that being said, discussion. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, so one of the things I was hoping was a quick recap of the changes not just for council, but for the people that are attending via the Zoom. And part of that is because we had gone from, I believe, 4 pages down to 2. So, I would think being able to say, here's what we cut out, here's what we kept, here's how we came to that conclusion would be something good to share with our community.
Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we did go from roughly 3 pages down to 1.5 pages for this because it is typically better to have everything on a 1-pager for the viewing of our legislators. And we started, so this was discussed back on December 8th, 2025 in the study session. And the first item, the public safety, the first 2 items are the same. The City of Auburn supports the continued reforms to policing and community caretaking in our state and wishes to continue working with legislators, police officers, our communities, and others to continue this effort. And the request is to work with cities to make technical fixes to those bills in which language is vague, conflicting, or confusing. Specific language on interviewing juveniles regarding their involvement in criminal activities. So that did not change from the original legislative priorities, nor did the second item. Police agencies are currently in a staffing crisis as we seek to fill vacated positions. We will need tools to ensure our departments are fully staffed and able to effectively respond to local public safety needs. Additional funding for officer wellness, recruitment, and retention. So there is slight changes. The first request on this current copy, additional funding for officer wellness, recruitment, and retention within police agencies was combined with there were 2 items in the original, additional funding for officer wellness within police agencies and additional funding sources for officer recruitment and retention, possibly through a councilmanic public safety sales tax impact fees or direct funding from the state. So they were just tightened up. The language was tightened up on those 2. And then we removed impacts to towing companies from Seattle versus Long. But then we did maintain ongoing public safety issues related to illegal drug use, request restore drug-free school zones and expand to community parks, which is something that we strongly believe in, or the police department strongly believed in supporting the restoration of drug-free school zones and adding community parks. And then additional funding to implement the new law, the Blake fix, that was not in the original legislation. Or no, wait, that was in the original legislation, and it has been removed in this one. It says to ongoing support for therapeutic courts, recovery programs in jails, and after treatment supports. So that was a request. We have removed the additional funding to implement the new Blake law. On flock camera usage, the original said, work to reject any bill or action that puts extensive restrictions on the use of flock or other ALPR equipment. Further restrictions would make it harder for law enforcement to locate criminals, missing vulnerable people, and locating stolen vehicles. And the updated language is work to minimize changes to the use of flock or other ALPR equipment while providing protections regarding disclosure of domestic violence or other crime victim information. Work on language that provides guidelines for use. Those changes were made at the recommendations and requests of Councilmember Sturgis and Councilmember Baldwin. We removed regulatory land use as a section. Let's see. Moving down to Public Works, Transportation, Infrastructure. we did keep the section on indigent defense, compliance with new caseload caps, as we have discussed with council, the reductions to the number of cases that a public defender is able to take on in a year over the next 10 years will be reduced by 2/3. And over every year between that, each caseload will have to be reduced by 10%. As you know, the cost for our public defenders has already gone up for 2026 significantly. And so we are asking for state funding and workforce support for indigent defense. Not only are the costs going up, but there is a shortage of public defenders in the state. And so we are asking for support from the state and to invest in workforce development, including recruitment incentives and loan repayment programs. Moving to public works, transportation and infrastructure, we significantly cut that section down as well to protecting all state funds that support local transportation and infrastructure projects. Cities cannot do this on their own, given the amount of growth and commerce in the region. And it's supporting the funding that is in place, but whenever there is a shortage of funding at the state level, some of these are the first to be looked at for the taking. The Transportation Improvement Board, Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board, WashDOT state grant programs, Public Works Trust Fund, and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So we are asking that those be maintained. Also under growing affordable housing crisis, that did not change significantly. We did tighten up the requests. In the original said, in order to address this crisis, we need to fund all aspects of affordable housing, including home ownership for moderate income household and below, preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, which is maintained in this updated version, land acquisition to secure permanent affordability, also maintained in this version, permanent supportive housing, which is maintained. We removed infrastructure around affordable housing developments and workforce housing, but we did maintain funding for the expansion of shelter space regionally. We removed the parks and open space, which was help cities protect and maintain parks and open space. We removed the budget and finance. The issue of the 1% property tax cap was removed as a priority. As you may remember, in last year's legislative session, the approval of the removal of that cap and revising the cap, tying it to inflation and population growth with a limit of 3%, did get as close as it has ever been to approval in the legislature, but it failed in the final hours with comments that it will not be coming back as a consideration for the legislators. And so we felt that that was not one of our top priorities. The directors, when putting this together, did not feel that it was one of the top priorities to maintain. Leasehold excise tax, also something that we will work on behind the scenes, but not anything that will come out as a legislative priority. So moving to labor and workforce impacts, we moved the indigent defense, state compliance with new caseload caps. We moved that under public safety as item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that language did stay, but it was tightened up a bit. And then under the labor and workforce, we did maintain an issue surrounding the paid family and medical leave, PFML. But that language was tightened up, asking that municipal governments who already provide robust paid leave, disability benefits, and federal FMLA protections, making the paid family medical leave a duplicative and costly mandate for both cities and municipal employees. So basically asking that municipal governments that already offer equivalent or superior leave benefits to opt out of the mandatory PFML participation to avoid duplicative payroll taxes. We ask that in both versions to establish an employer audit and verification authority to strengthen accountability and long-term program solvency, and refocus PFML eligibility and usage on serious medical and family care needs consistent with the program's core purpose. As we talked about in December, there are no audit requirements in place that are being utilized, and so even at the state level, they do believe that there is a significant amount of fraud that could potentially be going on, and so asking for a tightening of audit and verification process because it is not only the employers that pay the PFML, and it is getting more expensive, but it is the employees who pay into PFML as well, and so that cost is rising for the employees significantly. So we're asking for more stringent requirements and audit oversight on this issue. We also kept in the tort liability costs that are threatening municipal fiscal stability. Tightened up the language a little bit about that, but the request is to enact targeted tort reforms to protect taxpayers. And consistent with other states, including modifying joint and isn't it severable?
Several.
It is several? Okay. Joint and several liability to limit municipal responsibility to proportionate fault or economic damages only. So in the state of Washington, there is a rule of 1%. If a city has 1% responsibility, if there is going to be someone suing, they can sue the city for the entire amount and have the city take on the full 100% of the liability if they consider that the city may have bigger dollars available, right? And so we're asking for reform on that so that if we are truly 1% at fault, we should not pay for any more than 1% of any settlement. And then we did move items under important items to watch, as you'll note on that second page: funding for transportation needs, affordable housing, building code cycle. As we talked about, it is sometimes difficult for department, community development to get all of the building code updates in place because of the frequency of those changes. And so we're asking basically for them to slow their roll on how often they update the code. We moved towing costs related to Seattle versus Long from a priority down to an item to watch, and protect and maintain park and open spaces as an important item. E-bike and e-motorcycle regulations in parks and on trails. As you know, we have talked about that in study session before, with council having some concerns in certain parts of our city over if e-bikes and e-motorcycles can be on streets, sidewalks, in parks. And so asking for regulations that may be tighter around that. There are state regulations in place, but we're asking for more clarity. And then we did keep the increased 1% property tax, increasing the 1% property tax cap on there as a watch item in case any of the legislators do have an appetite to discuss.
Thank you, Mayor. Any discussion, Council? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, first I want to say I'm glad to see the tort liability showing up as one of the key issues. I think that's very important for all cities in the state. I did want to ask a couple questions. So however, Chair, you want me to run through those. I think probably starting with the simplest, on our social services where we have the item for supporting the construction and operation of tiny home villages. I might consider or recommend that we consider expanding the language to say or multi-unit residents. just to provide us more options as we look at those opportunities in the future.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So there are already through commerce, there's a lot of affordable housing opportunities, but we have not seen anything come forward on tiny home villages. So that's why there is specifically the language on tiny home villages. Because through commerce, there are already millions of dollars available for supportive housing.
Anyone else? Councilmember Hammer?
I'm just saying a point that when we be changing the contact. I'm fine.
Yes, the
just
contact will be going to, it is a brand new email address, governmentaffairs@auburnlaw.gov will be the new, right? Will be the new contact
Thank you.
information.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, the second area I wanted to ask about was with the language for flock camera usage. Is there any part of this request that would address or consider language that would protect the misuse of it as it pertains to ICE actions? So if we were looking at flock camera usage for things that are criminal nature versus civil.
So within the state of Washington, it is already illegal to provide any of this information to an ICE official except for criminal, in regards to a criminal offense. And so that is under Assistant Chief Betts, remind me, it's something, it's not the right to work, it's the
Council Assistant Chief Betts,
Keep
it's in
Washington
the Keep Washington Working Act. So we do not have any partnerships with ICE or DHS, HSI, U.S. Border Patrol. No one has access. None of them have access to our flock system at this time right now. No federal agencies have access to our flock system right now.
Anyone else? Councilmember Lott?
Yeah, following up on the flock camera, I mean, that's kind of a hot topic in private information and victims. And while I read here that it says work on language that provides guidelines for use, it's pretty vague as to what that is. And I'm wondering if we could define more what our expectation for the guidelines of use is.
So typically, Auburn legislative priorities have not given specific language. We provide the information and the request to the legislators. We sometimes are able to find someone who is willing to sponsor a bill, but we try not to be that prescriptive in what we ask our legislators for.
Any other questions? Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, I did, I think at the December session, ask if there was any concerns in our request under public safety being considered duplicative with the criminal justice sales tax that we were just empowered to be able to use. So I think we tightened up the language pretty well to remove the councilmanic portion, but I wasn't sure if our legislators would be responsive if they feel like they've already accommodated that request in last cycle.
So
specifically, the funding sources could include impact fees. I would not be upset if there was more direct funding from the state. That would be wonderful.
Right. So impact fees would be a separate item from the 0.1% sales tax. And that has been an ongoing discussion over the years of whether there could be impact fees for police. And so with the discussion of the police chief, and I'm going to be assuming the entire leadership team at Auburn Police, they wanted to keep impact fees and direct funding in the request. They're asking for that.
Any other questions? Councilmember Baldwin?
And then the last one, which I had also brought up in December, was, for me, I think this is probably one of the big ones, is I have concerns about the issue for the paid family medical leave. both the language and the different bullet points. Now, I absolutely agree that if we want to seek additional auditing and verification authority to make sure that there's accountability and to make sure that they are not dealing with any type of fraud, absolutely can get behind that. But I worry a little bit that in how this is presented, that we're presenting it as a double dip. And part of that is family medical leave is a non-paid right that people are protected to take leave for themselves from their medical issues, and that is already somewhat limited. The paid family medical leave empowers people to receive what is effectively an unemployment insurance. And we're talking about a situation where they have, in fact, as you mentioned, paid into that themselves. And we as a city also pay into that. And so if they are paying into it, I just find it something that is good for our employees. I think it's good for our city and community, where if they're having health issues or if they're having kids or if they need to be a caregiver or they're thrown into this situation, I think for the most part, there's a lot of situations where people are not necessarily even wanting to be in those situations, but they need to be. And to look for an opt-out method, I don't think is, quite honestly, I feel like we would be not partnering with people that we bring in to be a part of Team Auburn. And so if we want to keep the audit and verification, absolutely support that. If there's a better way to clean up the language, because as I'm looking at it, if somebody was taking off time to be a caregiver for somebody else, I don't see where there's a double tax or a double payment happening for that. So can someone fill me in if that's the case?
Director Martinson.
Thank you. So without taking too much time to go over all of the different benefits that the city has, I just wanted to explain just from an implementation standpoint in HR how we view it. So from our standpoint, there's already been some provision and changes in the previous legislative session to paid family medical leave. So one of the revisions was instead of 8 hours being a claim period, that you can now do a claim period for 4 hours. In addition, there is a way, because there was a loophole in the provisions previously where employees could essentially take FMLA for 12 plus weeks, utilize their paid leave that they had accrued on the books, and then overlap by 1 day, and then they would have an extension of leave for paid family medical leave that would then kick in for the second 12, 16, 18 weeks. There's different leave provisions dependent upon what you're taking leave for. So folks were taking extended leave, and primarily what we're seeing is they're taking extended leave for baby bonding. And so in our mind, we were like, okay, well, there's not a lot of restrictions on how we can manage that from a staffing standpoint. So like, for example, if I wanted to take leave for baby bonding, not recovery of childbirth, but just baby bonding, I could pick, Mondays and Fridays, or I could pick any day that I want to do it, because you can take it intermittent. I could take it on days where maybe there's like minimum staffing issues in the police department. And so then we have people holding over on mandatory overtime. And so we have no real way to grant leave for non-emergency issues, and bonding is still important. So I don't mean to minimize the importance of fathers bonding with their newborns, but there's no provisions that we have from a minimum staffing standpoint. And I know that fire departments also have minimum staffing. There's times where public works staff have emergencies or minimum staffing. And so basically I'm looking at our agency with almost 500 employees and having a very healthy budget, and I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't imagine being a small business owner where I have to comply with these provisions, and I don't have the staffing, or I don't have a way to come in. And so from our standpoint, we make it work. with the way that it is. But if we're talking about reform, I think we're talking about, is there anything that we can do that allows us to be able to kind of work within the operations that we have? If somebody has a major medical issue where they're hospitalized or going through cancer treatment, recovering from chemotherapy, those or a caregiver for somebody like that, maybe there's a different level or layer for those types of situations that are more emergent and less of something that could be scheduled or worked around based on staffing. But what we've seen is that employers can't really question or look at claims. So we had a situation where an employee was got injured at work, or they filed it as an occupational disease claim. So it wasn't necessarily a physical injury, it was a mental injury of a police officer. And in that situation, their workers' compensation claim was denied after they were paid by the city, kept on salary for a period of time. So then the claim was denied, so we had to attempt to then recoup that because that was not paid in error along with workers' compensation insurance. And then that same individual then was able to claim PFML for the same period. And so we asked the question because that worker was appealing what L&I, the department, ruled on the workplace injury. And we asked the question of a labor attorney, well, how do we report this information to ESD, because they might pay out right now when this person doesn't have an income, and then L&I may reverse the order through appeal, so now they'll be paid twice. Once by the city of Auburn for kept on salary, which is we don't deduct their leave bank for workers' comp injuries, we just pay them for 6 months, and then if the injury exceeds 6 months, then we deduct it from their leave bank. So this is very lengthy and hard to put in this memo, but there are some specific situations where we feel like there could be some healthy reforms that don't actually harm legitimately injured workers or workers that need to be off to be a primary caregiver for legitimately injured or ill family members. But we don't have a mechanism because even with unemployment claims, the employers don't have really a mechanism to go in and verify any of that information. In ESD, it's very locked down. And so we'd like to be able to partner, and we also recognize that there are some operational impacts here. And if the intent was for folks to be gone for the 12 weeks of FMLA and receive pay for that time, because that's a shortcoming of the federal law, and the state wanted to do right by workers, but they needed a fund to pay for that because not all employers give generous leave accruals like governmental employers do. We understand that, but with the way things were worked, and hopefully some of it's fixed with the legislative update, we have yet to be seen because ESD doesn't even have the required notices that were supposed to be developed January 1 done yet for employees. We've been to one webinar on the changes, so we're hoping that they're understanding that there needs to be more of a partnership with employers on this. But I think some of our asks are, like in our case, we have sick leave, vacation, comp time, management leave. We have leave sharing provisions for people that exhaust all of their leave. We have long-term disability policies for folks. So these are all things that the employer and the employee pays into, or benefits that we provide. And so in a situation where you're an employer like us that's already filled a gap that the federal government has with FMLA being unpaid, is there a way that, maybe the period in which you don't have leave is covered under ESD, and maybe we're saving our employees some money in a tax that's coming out of their payroll? Because primarily the tax is impacting employees, and with there not being auditing mechanisms or kind of some of these common sense, like case by case situations on benefits, like you have to prove that you're in an uncompensated status to get the benefit or something like that. But there's no real reforms that are in place that, from my standpoint, seem practical from someone who manages leave for 500 employees. So it's not intended to be a takeaway. I think it's just intended to say, are there duplicative benefits that employers are already offering to where you pay this tax, but maybe you don't actually need the benefit? And because we also pay very fairly, a lot of our employees, their compensation exceeds the threshold for what's paid. So that's already a deterrent for folks to actually go out and use the leave because they're not going to make enough money even with PFML. And so maybe like a short-term disability or a long-term disability policy that we have, a lot of folks have AFLAC policies and other things. So I don't know. I wish it was a clearer explanation for each scenario, but those are just some of the scenarios that I think off the top of my head that I've seen.
Mayor?
Thank you. We have heard from some of the legislators when we have talked about the fact that we feel like this is a duplicative benefit. We understand the need for those employers and employees who may not have generous leave benefits like municipal governments have. And they said, well, that wasn't our intention. It wasn't our intention to do that. It was intended to be for those who do not have benefits. Unfortunately, that's not the way the bill was written or the way it was passed. And so we are wanting to have the legislators understand that there are already very generous benefits in place for municipal government employees, and that the focus should really be on those employers and employees who do not have benefits in place already.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, so responding to the very long input that we had from Director Martinson and the mayors, coming back to what's in front of us, I think the concern that I have is that if someone's on FMLA, and as was noted, they use their, accrued PTO and sick leave to have income during that period, that is someone who is using something that they have accrued and earned. So they have every right to use that in that scenario. And most people don't have enough banked, even in a generous municipal situation, to cover the full term of an FMLA leave, which can be up to 12 weeks. When you look at that, and even if they're stacking, when we talk about people going into these situations, whether it's baby bonding or being a caregiver, going through chemo, I think the reality is that the PFMLA was brought to Washington because what existed or didn't exist out there was leaving people struggling, right? And so trying to make sure that families have enough time to do the work that they need to do to make sure that people can be healthy, that they can be cared for, that their families are strong and able to go forward. And like I said, when it comes to audit and verification, absolutely, that bullet to me makes perfect sense. Continuing in the future to explore what some other opportunities might be to tighten up the program, I think would make sense. But for this session, I do still have concerns in the area of having municipal governments be able to opt out, because some of the leave that was mentioned by Director Martinson, management leave, not every employee has that. The share bank, I don't know what the mechanisms are for that, whether everybody would equally be able to have access to that, or if you would have to have someone, agree to give theirs up, right? And so
That's what that is.
So maybe you're here and you don't know a lot of people. So I see variable access to some of the types that were described. And what we're trying to do is make sure that any staff or employees are going to have equal opportunity to be able to have these benefits. And so if we struck the first bullet, I would prefer to see that because I don't think we're in a position yet that we should be trying to fully opt out of participating in these programs. I think the programs are beneficial to our employees, and if they are paying into it with their taxes, I think they should be able to participate in that. Likewise, we heard mention of short-term disability and long-term disability. Well, that's great if you are the one disabled, but I don't know that covers being a caregiver, which PFMLA does cover. And so I think there are enough unique scenarios that we did hear the edge case that was shared with us where there was a question of was someone technically receiving double payment? Well, workers' comp acts as an insurance, which is a different thing than someone necessarily paying their bills. So I'm not comfortable having the first bullet go through as a legislative request as it's written, because I don't think that we have done enough to understand what is available across the board to our different employees. And I don't think that it's duplicative. I think that people are paying into a program that they have a right to take a benefit of. And then with the refocus eligibility, again, I do have some concerns there because I think that that's a little vague, and I think the importance of these programs is to help people when they need help. And when we talk about valuing our employees and we talk about, Team Auburn and what it means to come in, it means that we look out for our staff and we look out for everyone, which, as noted, we have a lot of great programs. But I don't think that these bullets as they stand, the first and the third in this section, I would support going forward. But if we kept the audit and verification, I would absolutely be on board with that.
Councilmember Emmer.
Just reading the first bullet, it said allowed municipal government that already offer. And they did not say we want to go out. They just want to make sure it's being done correctly. And for check that, you want to think about it from both sides. Both sides, this is being done correctly. If people really need it, will just align it, make it clear. I haven't seen no, we're not giving you paid family leave. You'll get paid family leave, but sometimes you want to allow the HR for any department to check this really person take it, because if you want to think about it, if I'm working and I know this person who just take it to leave the day people need it, it will be more organized. I don't think there is anything here written will come against paid family leave, and they really want to make sure that we either vote, then when we go to meet our legislative, then we could be able to pass things, because if we will not get it done, that means when we go Wednesday or Thursday, we have nothing to talk about it to our legislative. We will get nothing being done.
Mayor. So, one of the concerns, and Director Martinson did mention that, but especially in some of our departments that are small, the extended leave time does cause significant hardships on those departments for someone to utilize all of the paid benefits that the City of Auburn already very generously provides, as well as FMLA and then the PFML, without any understanding of how they're utilizing that time. And so again, because the City of Auburn and most, if not all, municipal governments are already very, very generous with their benefits, we do see this as duplicative. The use of a shared leave bank, everyone has the same access to that within the city. It's been utilized several times. I've donated some of my leave at times to banks for individuals who may have exhausted their leave benefits but are facing either their own significant health crisis or a family member crisis. And so, again, we feel that PFML, while very beneficial for businesses and employees who do not have paid leave time, we do see that as a significant benefit. We see it as duplicative and unnecessary for the City of Auburn and other municipal governments.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify to Councilmember Ammer's discussion of the first bullet is this would be us as a body requesting the ability for municipal governments to opt out of the program. That's what it is. It's an opt-out. And I don't think that we should be able to opt out of something that is available across the state through other industries in this space. I think that we can say, I think there's a reality is that you may have many employees who go to take their FMLA and they may not have accrued leave, in which case they would immediately need to be able to take advantage of the PFMLA. As we heard from Director Martinson, the amount that's received by individuals may not be enough to replace their income. So I don't know that the frequency of stacking is necessarily even as common as what's being discussed. If we're talking about what I think we are ready to go forward with, and I would like to get this passed, is I'm not comfortable with the first bullet, and I'm not comfortable with the last bullet. And the reason for that is, as I've described, I think that there's enough need for these programs, even with the generous benefits that we have in Auburn. I think that there are many situations where someone could be short and need that to be able to get by. And I think as employers with 500 people, yes, we may sometimes have staff members that are key or critical that we have to backfill or get temporary contracts or have people to backfill with contractors for short-term periods, which there are different options that businesses use to manage their staffing. I don't think that going to our legislature to say we want our city to be able to opt out of this program, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think that the things that we're talking about are so critical to society. Being able to be caregivers, being able to have baby bonding, being able to, get medical care and treatment when you need it. We're talking about people who are going to be in moments of struggling. And so I don't think it's appropriate to ask that we opt out of that. I would like to get this legislative priorities sheet passed, but I would like to strike the first and third bullets within this section.
Councilmember,
Is that a motion?
is that a motion?
Yes.
Can you state the motion, please?
Yes. I move to pass the 2026 legislative.
Councilmember,
You made the amendment.
that's already been moved and seconded, your motion to strike.
Thank you. I move to strike the first and third bullets of the section for under labor and workforce impacts for the Washington paid family medical leave
She's went to strike.
issue.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Rakes with the second. Discussion? Any more discussion?
Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to restate the motion.
Okay.
Councilmember Baldwin moved to amend the Legislative Council priorities to remove the allow municipal governments that already offer equivalent or superior leave benefits to opt out of mandatory PFML participation to avoid duplicated payroll taxes, and strike refocus PFML eligibility and usage on serious medical and family care needs consistent with the program's core purpose. Is that accurate? Yes, okay. That's the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Sean. It was seconded by Councilmember Rakes. Any more discussion? Councilmember Sturgis.
I guess I'm just not quite, I appreciate your insight or your thought process on this, but the way that I'm interpreting it, and so Mayor, I just would ask for some clarification here, is that this is not taking away anybody's access to any benefits. This is that if they already have these benefits through their employer, then they can't take advantage of the system and double dip. And that maybe, I'm sorry for not using the proper language there, but and that's just as an employer who not even small, I think I mentioned this prior meeting, but not even small business owners. I mean, big businesses are affected this way. If you go into a branch location at a Wells Fargo, they only get 5 tellers. And so when that one teller is gone for 6 months, the customers are all impacted. And yes, people still go into banks. But, then the line is backed up and that company can't, is hurt. And yes, we're all excited that the person gets the benefit with their baby. But when they take advantage of it, it is crippling. And so for me, I'm just not seeing how this is taking away anything. So I wouldn't need to strike anything. I'm just seeing that it's making sure that the employer can not have the person take advantage. So I wanted your clarification on that, Mayor.
Mayor? Thank you. So, yes, the city of Auburn does believe in the benefits of baby bonding, of caregiving, of being able to have time if you're going through chemo or some other treatment, that's why there are these significant benefits that are already in place that the city of Auburn pays for as a benefit to employees, both those that are covered under a collective bargaining agreement and those who are not. City of Auburn has very, very generous benefits already in place. And we do feel that this is duplicative and would prefer to be able to opt out of providing for the PFML on top of significant benefits that are already in place. Yes, sometimes you can find contract labor or temporary labor to assist in covering for a position, but not all positions. Maybe half. But you're going to have individuals in public works, or you certainly can't do that in the police department. You're not going to contract with an individual to be a police officer. Same thing in community development. You're not always going to get to do that. And so we have already started to see what we feel may be misuse of this benefit, but we can't prove it because there are no ways for us to see this, which is why we do have the bullet point about establishing employer audit and verification authority.
Councilmember Baldwin.
As said previously, I agree with keeping the audit and verification. I think that's absolutely important. But the first bullet would allow the city of Auburn and other cities, other municipal governments, to opt out of participating in the program and stop. It is an opportunity to opt out. That's what that is asking for. And I think that that is not something that I can support because I think that the program is there to be available to help our staff and employees when they need it. I think if they're paying into those taxes, they should have a right to take advantage of it. If we opted out, if legislators made that an available option, I think that would not only negatively impact our staff, because I think there are enough situations where that program would help families be able to take care of whoever's in need for healthcare or child rearing or whatever is happening, right? It's not, frankly, my business. I just want them when they need it to be able to take advantage of it. I think it's a good program. I do think it needs to have the audit and verification authority. And so I support the overall document, but I can't support the first or the last bullet until we get better data showing actual misuse and until we can, see what better information from staff about what costs are affecting us. But I'm not going to have us as a city opt out of a state level benefit without having better data to support it. Because right now I'm hearing speculation. I'm hearing we think there's misuse, and there may in fact be. But why are we going to shortchange people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing? Because maybe you've got a handful that are taking advantage of the system. I don't think we kill something without having better data, and I think better data begins with the second bullet, which I support, and I think that we have other legislative sessions where once we have a better insight to is there misuse or things happening that shouldn't be, then we can go back and reevaluate whether or not opt-out would be a good option for us. So I just think it's too premature to take us out of the mix.
Any more discussion, council? Sean, if I may, next step would be to vote to strike this, correct?
We are currently on the item on the floor is to vote on the amendment.
Right, okay.
Which is to
So, all those in favor of striking the 2 bullet points, which are allow municipal governments that already offer equivalent and or superior leave benefits to opt out of mandatory PFML participation to avoid duplicative payroll taxes and refocus PFML eligibility and usage on serious medical and family care needs consistent with the program's core purpose, say aye.
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 Nay? Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Can you put your hands up? 1, 2, 3. So Councilmember Sturgis, Taylor, Lott, Ammer, and Deputy Mayor Taylor voted no on that. So that fails. Now, any other discussion with the rest of the legislative priorities for 2026? No? Okay. If there is no further discussion all those in favor of adoption of Resolution 5886, which sets forth the 2026 state legislative agenda for the city of Auburn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay?
Nay.
5-2. Motion passes. So we have officially adopted Resolution 5886, moving forward our 2026 legislative priorities to take with us to AWC Action Days next week. All right. This is the section on the agenda where council can share topics of interest and/or reports on special focus area matters. Reports should be limited to 5 minutes. I will start with Councilmember Lott.
I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Baldwin.
No report tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Rakes.
No report.
Councilmember Ammer.
I had the special focus area meeting today and she presents, so I'm good. Thank you.
As chair of the Special Focus Area for Public Works and Economic and Community Development, we went over a couple of things for that will be on your agenda for next meeting. Meeting on January 20th has been canceled, so it's been moved to January 26th. And we will hear presentations from staff then, and you will see the agenda items coming up very soon. Councilmember Sturgis.
We've just, Melissa just went through and helped us for special focus area municipal services to get all of our meetings calendared for the year. So we'll be beginning our meeting schedule shortly.
Fabulous. And Councilmember Taylor.
Nothing to report.
Wonderful. With that being no more items on tonight's agenda and no further discussion,